I want to talk about the Japanese animation that changed the Philippines. The name is Volts 5. Volts 5 aired in Japan from 1977 to 1978. It was also popular in Japan, but in the Philippines, it is a national animation that everyone knows. It has recorded the highest viewership rating of 58% in the Philippines, and is loved by parents and children for 3 generations. In 2016, they asked 88 Filipinos who came to Japan on TV, and they all knew about it. When Mitsuko Hori, who sang the theme song, was invited to the Philippines, she was treated as an honored guest. The theme song was so popular that it even became the military song of the Philippine Navy. I don't know if it's true, but there is a story that a Japanese man who encountered a robbery in the Philippines sang the theme song of Volts 5, and was let off the hook. Only in the Philippines is there a live-action version of Volts 5. By the way, this is the quality of Gundam at amusement parks in the Philippines, but Volts 5 is just like this. I can see that they love Volts 5. I wish they would love Gundam a little more though. This article will introduce why Volts 5 has become so popular in the Philippines. Volts 5 is the story of 5 boys and girls who ride Volts 5 and fight against the Boson aliens trying to invade Earth. Logol, prince of the planet Boson, has defected to Earth. The reason for the exile was that the prince was born without horns. The planet Boson was a dictatorship where the presence or absence of horns determined the class, and if you didn't have horns, you were treated as a slave. The exiled Logol will have children on Earth, which will liberate the planet Boson. In a way, Volts 5 is the story of the revolution and liberation of the rebels led by the exiled Logol. Unlike previous anime, this one focused on drama and complex human relationships, making it an enjoyable work for children and adults. In the Philippines, as it was intended, adults were also enthusiastically watching the program. There were only American cartoons in the Philippines, and Volts 5 was a shocking event. At the height of its popularity, in August 1979, President Marcos declared the show off the air, just before the last episode, and cancelled it. The reason for the cancellation was due to the problem of violent expressions. However, only Volts 5 was cancelled, while the other Japanese anime continued. Why was only Volts 5 cancelled? This was because the second half of the story was suggestive of revolution. It is believed that who banned the broadcast due to political pressure from President Marcos, running an autocratic government. He was probably afraid of a revolution, but dictators are very sensitive then again. In 1986, after President Marcos was ousted in the Adusa Revolution, it was 7 years later that Volts 5 was aired again in the Philippines. During the Adusa Revolution, 1 million people gathered on Adusa Street to protest the Marcos regime. The citizens wanted a peaceful solution. The tanks used to quell the protest were approaching right in front of the citizens. The tension is so extreme that the people's blood could be spilled at any moment. Among them, a young woman stepped in front of the soldier and offered him the flower she was holding in her hand. The soldier was puzzled but took the flower and turned around. It is also called the People Power Revolution in the Philippines, because it was a non-violent people who overcame revolution. Volts 5 is the story of a revolution and the overthrow of a dictatorship. In the Philippines, the people united and drove out the dictatorship of President Marcos. Strongly linked to the public sentiment of the time, Volts 5 became an anime that is etched in their hearts. In 1999, Volts 5 was rerun, and the ratings exceeded 40%. Because it was so popular even in reruns, Volts 5 is still loved by a wide range of generations in the Philippines. Finally, a few comments from Japanese people who have learned this fact.
I guess the Volts 5 matched the historical background of the Philippines, and I'm glad they love it so much. Thank you so much for your love of Japanese animation. I am so happy to know that my favorite works are loved not only by me but also by people worldwide. It's great to know that the anime and game genres are easily denigrated but can also be a force for change in people and countries. I hope that what will make more such anime in the future. A Filipino once asked me, "You know Volts 5, right?" When I said I didn't know, he said, "You're Japanese, right? Why don't you know?" he told me once.
How did you feel about it? That's all for this explanation. We will continue to cover all topics related to Japan, so if you have any topics you would like us to cover, please leave a comment. Thank you for watching to the end.